Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ironworker Gaming channel. I am Ironworker814, and the video I have for you today is kind of going to be on the longer side, but I think it's an important subject matter that we need to discuss. So what I have for you is 15 ways Bungie could fix Destiny 2 to get it in a better spot going forward. Now this is not the end-all be-all list of all the ways Bungie needs to change Destiny 2 to get it in a better spot. It's more the start of a conversation. So if you agree or disagree with any of the points here, feel free to let me know down in the comments. If at any point in time you think this video or channel is worth supporting, the like and subscribe buttons are there for you to use at your own discretion. Like I said, this video is going to be a long one, so if you want to get some snackies and a big gulp and get comfy, and join me for this ride, that's awesome. If you would like to put your playback speed to 2x for maximum information efficiency, that's not a bad idea either. Now going into making this video, I already had my own pretty well fleshed out outline of hopes and dreams for Destiny going forward, but I decided to reach out to my clanmates, just because this is a huge topic for one man to tackle, and I wanted to get some other people's perspective on things, not just my own. And I'm really glad I did, because there was definitely some sore spots that they expressed that did not initially make my list. So, in no particular order, and without further ado, let us get into the list with number 15. The secret exotic quests and the dungeon-like experiences that came with them were probably one of the highlights of the entire franchise. You know, the quests like Whisper of the Worm, Outbreak Perfected, and to some extent, the Bad Juju quest. Not only did these missions bring large new playable areas, but they also brought some mystery, intrigue, and excitement to Destiny 2 that it is oftentimes lacking. Now these pieces of content were extremely challenging when they were released into the game, but the carrot on the stick was so good that absolutely everybody wanted to get into these missions, get them done, and get that exotic reward. Now these missions and quest lines, while they were not infinitely replayable, you did have to get back in there a couple times to snag that exotic catalyst for the gun. But a lot of people found themselves running these missions over and over again to help their friends out. The player base absolutely loved these quests. I mean, they ate them up. They ate them right up and said, "More please." And while there is no doubt that a great deal of time and resources are spent on these quests to pull them off, in my opinion, this is time well spent. So yeah, more please. For number 14, it would be nice if rewards from the Pinnacle game activities like raids or Grandmaster Nightfalls felt more rewarding. In my opinion, for the players entering and completing some of the most difficult content in the game, the loot drops at the end should feel powerful and special. Better stat rolls and specialized raid perks would probably be a great place to start. If you were around for Destiny 1, you probably remember the perks that came on the raid armor. Now, most of these perks weren't overly helpful or powerful outside of the raid, but they did help you complete the raid more efficiently. I mean, it was nothing game-breaking or anything, it was just a nice quality of life boost for those who are dedicated raiders. In Destiny 2, I feel like we were starting to go down that path with the armament mods and the menagerie mods that would help you out in the Leviathan, but I feel like this idea was just never fully realized. Oh, and speaking of having gear feel special, how about that Destiny 1 Age of Triumph raid armor? That stuff looked amazing. I mean, just the fact it looked stunning made it desirable loot. And most raid armor in Destiny 2, I probably couldn't pick out of a lineup to tell you the truth. So better loot for high-end activities is much needed. Since the launch of Destiny 2, the shader system has really bugged me, and I think we need to go back to the Destiny 1 shader system where the shaders were collected, unlocked, and could be used freely at any time. Now they did make some improvements allowing these shaders to be mixed and matched and put on different pieces of gear, but how nice would it be just to have your whole shader collection accessible at all times to apply to whatever piece you wanted, whenever you wanted. But with Destiny 2, shaders turned into a single-use item. If you run out of a shader, which you are probably going to, you're going to have to head to your collections. But to pull them out of your collections, you're going to be spending Glimmer and Legendary Shards. This is a totally unnecessary and annoying pain point in my opinion. And then armor ornaments. I'm not even sure if you could call them ornaments. I mean, they're skins. Simply seasonal skins that you can get from Eververse. Or if you were around for year 1 in Destiny 2, you do have those couple from Crucible or Iron Banner or Vanguard that you could apply to those items. But yeah, they're skins, they're not ornaments. When I think armor ornament, my brain goes straight back to Destiny 1 with the chroma glows. It wasn't much, but it added some flair to your Guardian, and players generally liked it. Now when Black Armory released, I got a little excited because the Obsidian Radiance came out. It was that single-use consumable that you could put on the Black Armory guns to give them that little shine or glow. Unfortunately, that's where it stopped. I thought this would have been a nice feature to have for any gun. And while shaders and ornaments have absolutely nothing to do with tangible content, cosmetic customization is always appreciated. And at some point, please, could my Guardian have a beard? Is that too much to ask? Just a little bit of facial hair? Power leveling is another thing I'd like to see Bungie focus on. The way we currently power up in Destiny 2 is starting to feel really stale. And a lot of the times your power level doesn't even matter for the content you're going into. With Shadowkeep, the artifact was introduced into the game, and this was something that was supposed to make power leveling feel more fluid. Unfortunately, this just turned into a tiresome bounty grind, which we'll touch on later. But why are we doing this? Just to make an arbitrary number go up? Now with Armor 2.0, the artifact mods, the seasonal mods, you could tell Destiny was making a conscious effort to make our Guardian feel more powerful without necessarily moving the number. The problem is it just feels like a really convoluted system. Like, for example, I'm running my Stormcaller. My gear is all kitted out for my Stormcaller. And then all of a sudden a bounty pops up where I need to use my Voidwalker. Then I'm gonna spend 15 minutes swapping out mods to optimize my Voidwalker. It's a really muddy system, and I think that's why players are shying away from it. Now Luke Smith in his latest director's cut expressed interest in really embracing the MMO aspect of Destiny 2. And I feel like these artifact mods and seasonal mods are probably their first step toward doing so, and I hope they continue down this path, and I hope they can fix power leveling without having to do a complete overhaul of the system. Next, we're going to touch on hard mode raids. And while this one wasn't personally on my radar, because I tend to hang my hat in the Crucible, there are plenty of players out there who desire a more challenging endgame experience. Hard mode raids were a staple in Destiny 1, and contrary to what a lot of people believe, building a hard mode raid does not add a ton of dev time. In Destiny 1, what Bungie did was build the hard mode raid first. Once the hard mode raid was complete, they'd take another look at it and scale it back in areas to create the normal mode raid, so that more players could have a chance at completing this content. So they would first release that normal mode raid, and then a month down the line, they would release the hard mode raid, which was actually the raid in its original form. So by scaling back the raid, instead of having to go back in and increase the difficulty, all the mechanics were in place. All they had to do was press the button, and the raid was released. In Destiny 2, we started off having a normal mode and a prestige mode, but this was shelved and they went to weekly challenges instead. With these raid challenges, the game basically just asked the fire team to complete encounters in a different manner, which to most players felt tedious and annoying. This did not resonate well with the hardcore raiding community, and this left them longing for true hard mode raids to return someday. Next we have the separation of the sandboxes. Building two completely different sandboxes for PvP and PvE has been a topic discussed in the Destiny community for a long time. This one here is a tricky one for me though, because getting a cool gun in PvE and taking it into the Crucible was what made Destiny feel unique and special to me, and ultimately why I fell in love with the game. But a split sandbox would give Bungie a lot more freedom to make more powerful and exciting weapons for PvE gameplay, without having to worry about completely destroying the PvP experience for months on end. Doing this would probably make the Crucible feel more balanced, and it would make the PvE side of things more engaging. But would this take away the very essence of what makes Destiny feel like Destiny? It's hard to say until you see it in action. And while I'm not sure how I feel about this change, I would at least be willing to give it a try. The topic of leveling weapons came up in my clan's discussion, and this really got me thinking. Remember way back in Destiny 1, once you acquired a gun, you would have to invest some time and resources into it to unlock the full perk tree? Personally, I really enjoyed this because I feel like it kept me engaged longer. But a lot of people saw this as a completely unnecessary pain point. Now, I'm not suggesting we go back to the full weapon leveling system we had in the early days of Destiny 1, but maybe a happy medium could be achieved. Here's an example of what I thought this maybe could look like. Say you get a gun with the Rampage perk on it, and maybe after a certain number of kills, this weapon intrinsically gains a Rampage spec, making your Rampage last longer. Or you could approach this from a cosmetic angle, where so many kills with this weapon net you a special weapon ornament. Or if you get a certain number of kills with the weapon, it'll glow a certain color. Both aspects would make the gun feel like your gun. And cosmetically, everyone else would be aware of the work you had to put in to get that gun to that point. With number 8, we are once again heading back to Destiny 1 for inspiration. In D1, your subclass perks and abilities were broken down into nodes. These nodes were broken down into columns, and you could select one node in each column. This gave you the freedom to mix and match your abilities and perks, promoting build diversity. While each subclass now has 3 skill trees, when Destiny 2 launched, there was only 2 selectable paths, giving a set of 4 pre-selected perks and abilities. So basically your choice was red or blue. This in Bungie's mind was probably a way of preventing players from arriving on one super overpowered perk combination that just blew everything else out of the water. Unfortunately for Bungie, this was not as well received as I think they would have hoped. While they were trying to create balance, they limited the players' freedom. And while I appreciate where Bungie's head was at in this thought process, nobody likes to be told how to play the game. It should be up to the players to decide. And maybe moving back to the old column and node subclass system would freshen things up a little bit. With number 7, we're going to be looking at a better loot balance. After 6 full years with the franchise, you'd think Bungie would be getting the loot situation dialed in just a little bit, but at some points it feels like we're just as lost as when we started. In Bungie's defense, it is a very thin line they have to toe when trying to make loot that feels special and unique without making it game-breakingly overpowered. And while doing this, they have to consider the amount of loot they're giving the player. At this point in time, Destiny is showering us with a lot of loot, and the amount of loot is causing veteran players basically just to spend time auto-deleting everything that comes into their inventory. But on the other side of things, Bungie needs to be generous enough with the loot to make the more casual players feel like their time investment is being respected. And I feel like this is the aspect Bungie always overswings on when making changes. Either the loot is way too generous, or they're way too stingy with it. Hopefully in the future, we can find that sweet spot with loot balance. Next thing I want to look at is simplifying the currencies and materials. This is something I think a veteran player might pay no attention to really, just because it's become second nature to us as Destiny players, but think about a new player coming into Destiny 2. Just look at what Destiny is dropping in their lap. Just to name a few, we have enhancement cores, enhancement prisms, ascendant shards, legendary shards, glimmer, silver, bright dust, barren boughs, dark fragments, alkane dust, data lattice, vanguard tokens, crucible tokens, gunsmith materials, callus tokens, iron banner tokens, and whatever seasonal material we're collecting. I mean, that is a lot for a player to keep track of. I mean, I'm all for depth and nuance in a video game, but I almost passed out just naming a portion of the currencies and materials in Destiny 2. Do we really need all of these? Maybe we could cut down on these just a touch to make the system feel a little less convoluted. In the Shadowkeep dev stream, Bungie developers talked about focusing on an ever-evolving world and connecting the storylines from season to season. I suppose they have been doing this, but the connections feel pretty loose, and if you don't look hard, you're gonna have a tough time connecting the dots. I mean, on the surface, players are looking at this like, we just rescued Saint 14 from his unfortunate fate at the hands of the Vex, for what? So he could come back and be the Trials of Osiris vendor? And I guess we killed the Undying Mind like 50,000 times, so Osiris could return, bringing us Menagerie 2.0 for a couple months. And I'm sure most people have picked up on the fact that we're basically assembling the Super Friends to battle back the darkness, but what's going on from season to season kind of feels more like cause and effect, not evolution. My next bullet point here is Bounties, and conveniently, Bungie released their This Week at Bungie update, kind of blowing up half of my talking points, but I'll kind of just go over the direction they want to head with Bounties and add my thoughts to that. The three big points they hit on in the update were basically shifting away from a bounty-focused season, focusing more on seasonal progression through different avenues, and looking at moving bounties out of the vendors and into the director. These are all great changes, and hopefully they can execute on these ideas, because the focus of the game has turned into bounties. They are boring, they are tedious, they are annoying, they are stale. I can't think of any other negative adjectives to describe them at this point, but we need to move on. I mean, looking back on the last 3 seasons, it's just been do bounties, and it never should have gotten to this point. Unless this is Bungie's way of buying time for some big game-changing developments, whoever figured out this seasonal content should revolve around just do bounties should be looking for a job. This promised shift away from a bounty-focused Destiny needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon. Ritual weapons and their predecessors' Pinnacle Weapons were a great idea and a great addition to the game. Until not having them brought back in Season of the Worthy, I didn't realize how much I truly missed them. I mean, you can say what you want about the extremely grindy nature of the quests, like the ones for Redrix or the one for Mountaintop, or the fact that Recluse was best in slot for far too long. What these weapons did was breathe life into the core activities. Even with the less desirable ritual weapons like Python for Gambit or Randy's throwing knife, it gave players a reason to play Gambit, and it gave players a reason to dip their toes in the comp playlist. If you ask any veteran player of Destiny, they'll tell you there is so much to do in Destiny 2 and absolutely no reason to do it. These guns provided that little bit of incentive that these core playlists really need. And I mean, without them, how many of you guys are running into Gambit and playing it just for the sake of playing it, or running strikes just for fun? Some of you, maybe, but a lot of you, probably not. And one gun per playlist per season isn't much, I realize that. And I don't think it's a big ask of Bungie to at least give us one gun a season in these core activities. It helps, it really helps. Number 2, can we wrap up a few storylines maybe? In the fall of this year, we will be entering the 7th year of the Destiny franchise. We've been introduced to numerous great stories with dozens of interesting characters. And while these stories and characters are expanded on in great depth in the lore, in-game storytelling is not really Bungie's strong suit. So why are we continually opening up new storylines? I suppose the why might not be the real issue, because I see where they're going. I understand the premise of having ongoing lengthy storylines. If you keep your audience on the hook, they keep coming back for more. The main problem is we have so many open storylines. I mean, this is turning into like a bad cable TV drama. We have so many open storylines, and Bungie is seemingly outright refusing to close down any of them. I'm sure eventually they have plans to connect all the dots, but you can only keep a fish on the hook for so long until it's going to work itself off. And with these story beats in some cases being so spread apart, player frustration is beginning to mount. I mean, it's been 6 full years of basically all questions and no answers. And when you pair that with this disjointed DLC and season model we have going on right now, there is no wonder players are losing interest. Can we please get some closure on a couple things soon? Okay, number one and the last point I am going to hit on is the fact it's been over a year and a half since we've gotten a vendor refresh. And even then, it was really only a partial vendor refresh. In Forsaken, we saw new items in the current loot pools of the Vanguard, the Crucible, and the Iron Banner. Other than that, no refresh. Oh wait, Tess. Eververse gets a full refresh every season, but my head might explode if we run down that path, so we're gonna have to save it for another time. While every vendor getting a full refresh in Forsaken would have been nice, it didn't seem so bad at the time, because the seasons following Forsaken had new persistent activities and brought full armor and weapon sets. As time moved forward though, we started seeing the same items coming out of the Iron Banner. The Drifter had the same inventory he had at the beginning of Forsaken, and there was absolutely no reason to spend your Vanguard or Crucible tokens because you've had that stuff 100 times over. I mean, personally, I don't care if Bungie reskins a bunch of items, throws some old perks on them, renames them, stuffs them in these vendors. I would just be happy seeing something different drop. And how about those planetary vendors, those poor planetary vendors like Asher or Devram? They've never had anything new added to their loot pool. Maybe just a gun or two would be nice, something to get you going back to them every now and again. I don't know if this is due to a lack of bandwidth on Bungie's end or if they just don't want to update these vendors. But moving forward, I would like to see a full vendor refresh for all vendors once a year. I don't think this is a big ask. I would like to see it done. It would really help freshen the game up. I'm sure you can probably think of 100 more things Bungie could do to Destiny 2 to improve the game, but this video has taken me a long time to make already, and if I hit every single topic, I'm not sure I would live long enough to see the completion of it. Plus, I'm not sure how long the general attention span of my audience is, but I would venture to say it's not 4 hours long, so we're gonna cut it here at 15. If you have anything else to add, please leave it down in the comments. Feel free to agree or disagree, or scream at me for missing a point that's important to you. Let me know what you think. Don't feel the need to hold back. I got thick skin, I can take it. Like I said before, this video took me forever to make. So, if you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to help support this channel. It goes a long way. If you'd like to catch me live, I do stream on Twitch. You can look for Ironworker814 over there, give me a follow, and you will get notified whenever I go live. With all that being said, I would like to thank you once again for spending a good chunk of your day viewing my content. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.